Hello to all of my wonderful friends in Maryland's beautiful 8th Congressional District and beyond in Maryland and our fans across the country. Time for my favorite time of the week, Local Heroes, when we get to recognize everybody who makes the 8th Congressional District such a magical place to live. You are going to be very pleased to meet today's local hero, who is with me now, Willie Mackey King, who is a resident of Montgomery County, and she's had an extraordinary career. She worked for the Reverend Martin Luther King at the Southern Christian Leadership Conference in the early 1960s, from 1962 to 1966. She had some remarkable experiences with him, but we wanted to highlight today the fact that she was the person who transcribed Dr. King's famous letter from a Birmingham jail. And we're going to ask exactly how he wrote that letter while he was behind bars, how he got it to Ms. King, and then how she ended up transcribing it and getting it out to the whole world. But I do want to start by saying that she has recently been recognized as a living legend and received the Living Legend Award from Montgomery County, and has received nationwide recognition for the critical role that she's played in the American civil rights movement, and also in all of the good work she's done since then. She studied at a number of great colleges and universities, including Georgia State, the University of Maryland, Montgomery College, and LaSalle University. So, Willie Mackey King, congratulations to you on being named our local hero in this month of August, the last week of August in 2021.
Thank you so very much. Thank you very much.
What's so much on my mind right now is whether you can tell us about the whole circumstances of Dr. King's letter from Birmingham Jail.
Dr. King, as you just said, was jailed in Birmingham, Alabama after a demonstration march there. During the time that Dr. King was jailed, his attorney, Clarence Jones, gave him a newspaper. The newspaper had an article in there from 8 white ministers who were criticizing his work in Birmingham, Alabama, saying it was untimely and a lot of unpleasant things about his being in Alabama in the first place. Well, normally Dr. King didn't answer all these criticisms that came across his desk. But because these were coming from what he considered men of goodwill, ministers in particular, he decided that he would respond to that article in the newspaper. He did that by writing on newspaper edges, toilet paper, paper napkins, brown bags where food was brought into him. And he got it out of the jail by giving it to his lawyer, who would in turn speak it out, bring it to Wyatt P. Walker, who was his executive director, or directly to me. And it was my job then to type from these bits of paper that had no rhyme or reason, no way you could determine what was next. So it was a matter of getting on the floor, and a lot of times it was not table space for this jigsaw puzzle. And we would put it together, and a blessing, I would call it, that Wyatt P. Walker had a vocabulary that could understand and decipher what Dr. King was saying. Because his writing was not the best, plus the writing under those circumstances made it even worse. Because he could not be caught writing. He had asked the jailers for something to write with, to write on, and he was reminded that this was not a library, that he was in jail. So, and the lighting was terrible. He had to write by the actual daylight coming through the cell, the windows in the cell. So it was not a very easy task, and it was one that I ended up not being able to leave the office for 2 nights and 3 days straight because Dr. King wanted to get that response out as quickly as possible.
We have come to think of Dr. King's letter from a Birmingham jail as a famous statement about the urgency of now and overcoming those who say, well, just wait, just continue to be patient, something will change one day. And I know so many people consider it one of the great documents of American history. How was it received when it first came out? Did it have that sense of history and a momentous turning point about it when it first came out, or did it take a while to achieve that kind of status?
When it first came out, it was like an ordinary piece of correspondence responding to people who had written into the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. It was not until Bull Connor decided to use the dog fire hoses on the demonstrators that the letter actually took effect. People started to read it and to try to figure out what was actually going on in Birmingham. Wyatt Walker had done many press releases, and we had gotten in touch with our press contacts personally and what have you about the matter, but it just didn't take off. It had no momentum whatsoever. But the moment that the chief decided he was going to use those dogs and the water hose, people really started to pay attention to Birmingham.
Wow. What an extraordinary story that is. You left SCLC in 1966, if I'm remembering this right. But why did you leave it at that time? And did you stay in touch with Dr. King until the end of his life?
Most certainly. I left the Southern Christian Leadership Conference to work for the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, only as a favor to one of Dr. King's attorneys, Donald Hollowell. The issue there had been that a lot of minorities would not file complaints with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission because they didn't trust the government. They didn't want to go in there to that federal agency and talk about their bosses and their jobs and their working conditions, knowing that they were going to get fired. So they had no confidence. The thinking was, some of these people recognized, some of us who had worked with the movement and worked with Dr. King, that they would be less hesitant to file complaints with the agency. So I went over as a special need.
Gotcha. And you spent 32 years at the EEOC working there and ended up becoming, I think it's financial manager, right?
I did. I did not go in as the financial manager, obviously, because I didn't have a job that was normally, in the end, awarded to minorities. So I had to start at the bottom and work my way up.
Yeah. Well, it's such a great pleasure and such a great honor to meet you. And I want to ask a question I know is going to be on some people's minds. Are you related to Dr. King?
No, I am not. But I get asked that question all the time, especially by youngsters. But no, I'm married. Different set of King.
I got you. Well, this week, this King, Willie Mackey King, is our local hero in the 8th Congressional District for the critical role you played in the history of the release of one of America's great documents. So thank you for that. Thank you for all of the public service you have rendered at the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And thank you for hanging tough for civil rights and for America. Thank you so much, Willie Mackey King.
Thank you for having me, especially on this time when we're getting ready to commemorate the March on Washington.
Well, and yes, you're right. Thank you for pointing it out. This is why we wanted to have you. We're coming up, I think it's on August 28th is the anniversary of the March on Washington. And there will be another march taking place in Washington for social and economic justice and jobs and for statehood for our friends in Washington, D.C. So thank you for pointing that out. Thank you for everything that you do. And thank you for being our local hero.
You're most welcome. My pleasure.